love it. I love it. I love it. Look at this. This is the greatest thing I've ever seen.
Hey, I'm not surprised.
Hey, what's poppin', my homies? Hope you're doing well, feeling blessed, having a good day, having a good week. This one's going to be Cannonier taking on Imavov, a very, very good main event. And we've got 14 fights to break down and predict. Before we do that, let's look at my bets from last week. And I clean sweeped. Let's go. I mentioned on my Instagram that I'd clean sweep or lose by 1. And I clean sweeped. So let's go. Now looking at my bets. Dawson Makhachev minus 150. I got that over a week ago, and on fight night it's like minus 275. That was a lock. Lima and Holland, that's cash money. You know, that's a good price, good double. And then we've got Roman Kopylov as a slight underdog. And there was only 2 underdogs on that whole card. So to get Roman Kopylov, pretty impressive. And then I had Ailin Perez because of the takedowns with the main event to start round 2. Slight plus money, another great ticket. And guys, I also parlayed all of my bets for a big plus money ticket because I just knew it was going to be a clean sweep or lose by 1. So yeah, not only did I clean sweep, but I put them all together and made over $1,000 on that. So yeah, let's go. Now guys, this week, way more difficult than 302, way more difficult than Barboza and Lerone Murphy. This one's a difficult card. Now looking at MoneyCity, guys, so many of you dusting up the bookie. You love to see it. That's what you want to see, right? The homie's going to the promised land, MoneyCity. So as always, if you see your name on the screen, you already know. You already know. That's money. Pure money. Let's go. Now moving into the first matchup of the card, we've got Puja Tomar taking on Rayanne Amanda. And guys, I'm not going to spend too much time on this matchup because I've not done a lot of tape on Puja Tomar. We're going to spend more time on decent matchups, and this isn't really one of them. But what I can tell you about Puja Tomar is she's a Sanda player. And Sanda is Chinese kickboxing. Now looking at Rayanne Amanda, she's coming off a split decision loss to Talita Alankar. And guys, she was minus 900 midway into round 2. So that's a split decision loss that you can go back and rewatch that fight. There's moments in that fight for Rayanne Amanda that are okay moments. You know, her boxing's okay. She's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. And guys, like I said, I've not done a whole lot of tape on Puja Tomar because when a fighter's making a UFC debut, I don't really like to do a whole lot of tape, you know, because I feel like when you do that, when you watch a whole lot of tape on somebody that's making a UFC debut, it's like you've already judged them. You know what I'm saying? I've never really done things like that. I like to make my first judgment when they make that appearance in the UFC octagon, when they make that performance in the UFC octagon. And I feel like when you watch a whole lot of tape on somebody who's making a UFC debut, you've already made that judgment. I'd never like to do that. So guys, the first time I judge Puja Tomar is going to be this weekend when she steps foot into the UFC octagon. What I can tell you is though, she's a Chinese kickboxer. She wants to kick. But looking at Rayanne Amanda in her last fight against Alankar, the boxing was pretty tight. Like I said, she was minus 900 midway into round 2. So guys, low level women's mixed martial arts. What are we going to do? We're going to pick Rayanne Amanda to win the fight. Are we going to bet Rayanne Amanda to win the fight? Definitely not. But give me Rayanne Amanda. Give me the Brazilian. Now guys, moving into a matchup between Cody Stamann taking on Taylor Lapilus. And this one's obviously a better matchup than the one we just broke down. Cody Stamann, he's got a lot of experience. He's a good wrestler. The forward pressure with the boxing, that's something that Mitch Raposo didn't have last week. And I mentioned Mitch Raposo because a lot of people said to me last week, look, Mitch Raposo's got the wrestling. Mitch Raposo can get Andre Lima to the mat. Why don't we take Mitch Raposo as a slight underdog, a good underdog? Now, the thing is, guys, when you have the wrestling, that's good. We want the wrestling, right? But you need to set it up. You know what I'm saying? You can't just have the wrestling and think you're going to get the fight to the mat. That's not how it works. It's never worked like that. Now, if you look at someone like Cody Stamann, this guy's always had good boxing pressure. This guy's always walked forward, you know, shown his boxing, shown his 1-2, you know, and that sets up the takedown. It sets it up because when the opponent thinks, look, this guy's trying to strike with me, that's when the takedown comes. Right? Because you focus on the hands, you focus on the striking. Now that's something that Mitch Raposo couldn't do last week. Now unfortunately for Cody Stamann, he is getting a little bit older and his game it's not really evolved too much. You know what I'm saying? But like I said, he's got the boxing. He's got the wrestling, and he is well-rounded. He's got a lot of experience. Now, Taylor Lapilus, this guy's good. This guy's very good. You know, his striking is very, very decent. Now, you see against Farid Basharat in his last matchup, he kind of got dusted. You know what I'm saying? He kind of got dusted. But Farid Basharat, we know both those guys are good. And maybe Farid is better than Javid. Maybe that's the answer, because that's always been a question mark. But guys, looking at this matchup, trying to make logical sense of this matchup, trying to think about what's most likely, what's going to happen, it seems to me that if Cody Stamann was to win this matchup, he probably has to use his wrestling, you know, bring Lapilus to the mat. And if Taylor Lapilus wins, you know, I guess you keep your cardio in check, you know, fight composed, fight behind the jab, fight behind the 1-2, get the kicks going, and just kind of let Cody Stamann know, look, if this matchup was to take place on the feet, then I'm going to dust you up a little. So yeah, good matchup, much better than the matchup we just broke down. Give me Taylor Lapilus as the prediction. Now guys, moving into a matchup between Eduarda Moura taking on Denise Gomes, and this one's interesting because when you look at Eduarda Moura, this girl's an absolute bully. Hey, don't let him bully your son. Hey, let's go, it's coming soon. Let's go. But this one's interesting because when you look at Eduarda Moura, she's a mauler. She's a bully. She's going to use her physicality to win the matchup. The moment the ref says fight, Eduarda Moura wants to get the opponent to the mat, impose her physicality on the opponent, and that's where she gets stoppages. That's where she wins the matchup, right? But when you look at Denise Gomes, this girl's got big power. Big knockout power. You see that against Bruna Brazil, dusted. You see that against Yasmin Haragi, dusted. Denise Gomes can set you down. You know, the moment Denise Gomes lands that 4-ounce glove onto the chin, and guys, by the way, the new gloves, no stoppages, new gloves, and we're still getting eye pokes. Hey, get rid of them. We're going back to the OG gloves already. But like I said, when Denise Gomes can set those 4-ounce gloves onto the chin, she can set the opponent to the mat. She can dust up the opponent. But the problem is, Eduarda Moura, like I said, she's a bully. She's like 5'7". She wants to get the opponent to the mat. And when she gets Denise Gomes to the mat, that's where Denise Gomes has to show her, look, you're not going to ground and pound me. You're not going to submit me. We're going to get back to the feet. And when we do, I'm going to test your durability. Are you really a fighter? Because now I'm going to give you some adversity to overcome. And that's where we're going to see. Do you want to be in here? Do you still want to be in the octagon when things aren't going your way? And that's a thing that every single fighter has to deal with. Guys, at all times in a fight, you're presented with the question, do you want to be here? And it appears to me that when things are going well, every single fighter wants to be there. But as Mike Tyson once said, everyone's got a game plan until you get punched in the face. And that's why I say this one's interesting. Because if Eduarda Moura doesn't get a first round stoppage, we know Denise Gomes can set you down. We know Denise Gomes has big knockout power. And if she starts to test Eduarda Moura, if she starts to punch her in the face, then we might see Eduarda Moura, you know, fold. We might see her fold like a deck chair. But guys, it always comes down to who can fight to their game plan, who can implement their game plan. We're going to see that this weekend. Eduarda Moura, she wants a takedown. She wants to get Denise Gomes to the mat. Denise Gomes, she wants to stay on the feet. She wants to punch Eduarda Moura in the face. She wants to stop her. She wants to be violent. Guys, for me personally, I'm going to side with the bully. I'm going to side with the physicality. And that's because I think Eduarda Moura gets Denise Gomes to the mat with pretty much little resistance. No resistance. And that's because Eduarda Moura is much bigger than Denise Gomes. So yeah, that's the pick. Now guys, moving into a phenomenal matchup here between Daniel Marcos taking on John Castaneda. And guys, if you want to make a bet this weekend on a very risky matchup, a matchup where you've made the bet, one moment the bet looks good, the next moment it looks bad, then it's back to looking good. If you want to make a bet where you're going on a roller coaster, then it's potentially Daniel Marcos and John Castaneda, because this matchup is fantastic. You know, this matchup here, Daniel Marcos and John Castaneda, this is it. This is one of the best matchups on the card. Now, Daniel Marcos, he's very fast. He's very light. He likes to move his feet, right? And what you're noticing with Daniel Marcos is he's not easy to find. He's not really easy to find in the octagon. Now, that wasn't the case against David Grant. I think David Grant done really, really well in that fight. And to be honest, when you go back and watch that fight, that's more of a David Grant fight than a Daniel Marcos fight. And when you look at his fight against Arichi Leng, you know, Daniel Marcos was looking great. He was looking great in that fight. So I think, you know, with Daniel Marcos, this guy's 15-0. He's a Peruvian. Better than Peruvian Kev, right? Much better. I like the striking. I like the speed. I like the footwork. I like that he's playing the game on a high level. Now with John Castaneda, this guy's more willing to do the dirty work. You know, this guy's more willing to wrestle. This guy's more willing to take your punches, to get on the inside, to land his big punches. John Castaneda's more of a scrapper, at least in this matchup, right? He's more of a scrapper, more willing to show toughness, more willing to dig deep in the fight to find the result. And that's why this one's such a good fight. You know, the betting line's -110. You know, the bookie knows this one's a real fight. So guys, the matchup goes to the mat. More than likely John Castaneda is the one taking it there. You know, more than likely he's the one using his wrestling. If Daniel Marcos stays on the feet, stays light, stays using his speed, you know, doesn't let John Castaneda find the target, and it's more technical, more clean, then in that case, John Castaneda, he's not going to have a good time. You know, he's going to be more in a technical fight, and that's what Daniel Marcos wants. Guys, this one is so difficult to pick. I'm a big fan of John Castaneda. You know, the wrestling, the boxing, the toughness, the forward pressure, the willingness to fight. I love it all. But with Daniel Marcos, you've got a guy that, you know, is just very quick, very technical, moving his feet very well. This one's difficult. Too difficult for me personally to put some money on. But my prediction is going to be Daniel Marcos, the Peruvian. Just think he's a little bit more technical, a little bit more clean. But John Castaneda can bring him into a scrap. And that's why it's a difficult pick. Now moving into a matchup between Andrea Lee taking on Montana De La Rosa. And guys, what you've got here is one fighter that's very skilled. Very, very skilled. And that's Andrea Lee. Right? She's a Golden Gloves boxing champion. She's a Muay Thai fighter. She's a brown belt in Jiu-Jitsu. She's a good wrestler. She's a good judo player. She can do it all. She can box. She can kick. She's tough. She can grapple. She can wrestle. Andrea Lee can do it all. But the thing is, there's been a few split decisions that have gone against Andrea Lee, right? And her record's not great. And she's also getting a bit old. And it's fair to say that the potential of Lee has passed. It's gone. But guys, the skill is still there, right? But the most difficult thing to do as a fighter, the most difficult thing to do, there's a specific location and a specific time where you've got to put your skills all together in the octagon under the bright lights. That's the most difficult thing to do, right? Some fighters are so good at doing that in the gym. And some fighters aren't great in the gym. But when the time comes, when the bright lights are on them, they just perform. Now Lee isn't really one of those fighters. You know, she's kind of struggled at putting those skills together, but she's still got the skill. She's a good boxer. She's a good wrestler. She's got the judo, the jiu-jitsu. She's got it all. But putting it together at a specific time, specific location, that's the most difficult thing to do. Now, on the flip side, you've got Montana De La Rosa, who, in my opinion, is just a wrestler. She's just a grappler. So guys, if you're Montana De La Rosa, you understand that you probably can't go into this matchup, keep the fight on the feet and win against Lee. You probably could if you have like an amazing night, but more than likely, you've got to use your wrestling. You've got to use your grappling. Stick Lee to the fence. Glue her to the fence. Glue her to the mat. And even if you glue her to the mat, you're still dealing with the jiu-jitsu of Lee. But more than likely, you're going to back your grappling against Lee. So that's what Montana De La Rosa has to do. Make the fight boring, essentially, right? Everyone's going to be watching the fight thinking, okay, Montana's got the control time. I'm going to go roll a blunt. I'm going to go get some food. I'm going to go do something because this is boring. That's kind of what Montana has to do. But in my opinion, give me Lee. Give me the skill. Give me the boxer. Give me the Muay Thai player. You know, like I said, she's not put those skills together and her potential has passed. Give me Lee to potentially have a nice win streak to end her UFC career, or at least win this matchup. Now guys, moving into a matchup between Brad Katona taking on Jesse Butler, and Jesse Butler is like Jimmy Butler's white brother, and his white brother got slumped in his UFC debut. He got dusted, and that's because Jim Miller was like, you know what, you're putting Jesse Butler in the cage with me. A10 Jim Miller. And Jim Miller just went in there and folded Jesse Butler like a deck chair. It was beautiful. One of the best knockouts we've ever seen. And that's because it was A10 Jim Miller, right? But yeah, Jesse Butler, in my opinion, should he be in the UFC? Probably not. Now, Brad Katona on the flip side, this guy was in the UFC. He got cut. He came back via The Ultimate Fighter, won The Ultimate Fighter. And you know what? Brad Katona's good. You know, this guy's a good boxer. He's durable. He's maybe too hittable, but like I said, the durability, the toughness of Brad Katona, this guy can do it. You know, he can wrestle, he can grapple, he can strike, he can show toughness, he can dig deep. This guy's got it. Whereas Jesse Butler, this guy's getting folded. So give me Brad Katona. And guys, to be honest, this one really should be as simple as what it seems to be. You know, Jesse Butler versus Brad Katona. The boxing of Jesse Butler's okay, but he's not got the experience. He's getting folded in his UFC debut. So like I say, Brad Katona versus Jesse Butler, it should be straightforward. It should be a pick here on Katona. Should be a simple pick. Now that isn't always the case, because when it comes to fighting, you know, how many times have we seen someone look really, really good? You know, they're dominating the fight, and then bang, lights out, done, game over. We see that like all the time, right? And that's because fighting is so dangerous. The most predictable thing about fighting is somewhat unpredictable, very unpredictable. But in this matchup here, Brad Katona against Jesse Butler, Jimmy Butler's white brother, give me Brad Katona. Now guys, moving into a very, very decent matchup, we've got Charles Radtke taking on Carlos Prates, and this is a very decent matchup. And the reason as to why that is, if you look at the boxing of Charles Radtke, this guy can box. This guy's boxing is very crispy, very sharp. And you see that against Urbina, you know, folded Urbina, dusted. And some people might say, well, Urbina's chin's in the sky. You know, you can find that guy's chin. But let's not take anything away from Charles Radtke. This guy's aggressive. This guy's a good boxer. And when he gets on the mic, he's funny too. I'm not going to lie, he's funny. So this one's good. But guys, Carlos Prates, this guy's not a boxer. I mean, he did set down Trevin Giles with his hands. You know, you look at that and you think, wow, this guy can box too. But guys, Carlos Prates is a Muay Thai striker. He's got over 100 Muay Thai fights. And this guy's Muay Thai is very good. Now, you may look at his UFC debut and say, hang on a minute. For the whole time against Trevin, he was losing that fight. And that's true. He was. But the positive with that is, you know, it's always good to win a fight where you didn't actually perform to your highest ability. And that's absolutely the case with Carlos Prates. I don't believe that was his best work in the debut. I believe this time round we're going to see a much improved Carlos Prates. Or not even a more improved Carlos Prates, just more of a Carlos Prates that we actually know. A Carlos Prates that we saw prior to UFC debut. A Carlos Prates that actually stands in the Muay Thai stance. He didn't do that in his UFC debut. Why not? Maybe he was seeing something against Trevin that we wasn't seeing. But this time against Charles Radtke, a really decent boxer. Make it Muay Thai versus boxing. And that's where you stand in that Muay Thai stance and let Radtke know, look, the kicks to the body, the kicks to the legs, I can find the mark. And Charles Radtke has to get on the inside, you know, take away those kicks from Carlos Prates and essentially fold him like he did Urbina. But guys, I always like to take Muay Thai over boxing as much as I possibly can, because boxing is the sweet science, but Muay Thai is the sweet violence. So when it comes to a real fight, I like to take the sweet violence over the sweet science. And boxing is just boxing. That's not a real fight. This is a real fight. Give me the violence over the science. Give me Muay Thai. Give me Carlos Prates to dust him up with the kicks. Now moving into a matchup between Thiago and Moises taking on Ludovic Klein. And guys, I'd like to compare this matchup to a fight that I've recently broke down, and that's Chase Hooper and Slava. Now what I said in that matchup is, it's a mismatch at all times. If we're on the feet, Slava's going to box him up. If we go to the mat, then Chase Hooper's going to dust him up. Now, surprisingly, the jiu-jitsu player actually dropped the elite kickboxer. And that's not to say Chase Hooper's like a good striker. That was luck. Guys, let's be honest, that was luck. You put those guys back on the feet, we know what happens. So guys, at all times in this matchup, it's a mismatch. If we're on the feet, Ludovic Klein's going to box him up. If we go to the mat, then Thiago Moises might wrap him up like a blunt. It's a mismatch at all times. So someone's going to find the fight extremely difficult at all times. So if you want to match up to bet that's similar to John Castaneda and Daniel Marcos, where it's very volatile, very risky, then potentially it's Ludovic Klein and Thiago Moises. But in matchups like this, as we saw with Slava and Chase Hooper, it can also appear to be very obvious who to bet, who to pick. You may think, well, at some point we're going to go to the mat, we're going to go to the canvas, and when we do, Thiago Moises inevitably is going to find a submission. Or you may think, no, hang on a minute, Ludovic Klein's not that bad. We probably don't go to the mat. And Ludovic's left head kick, his boxing, is so sharp, it's so quick. He's going to dust up Thiago Moises. But guys, like I said, at all times, it's a mismatch. At all times, it's volatile, it's risky. And if you put the M16A4 Red Tiger with the red dot to my head, COD 4 08, if you did that, then I'm going to pick Ludovic Klein to win the matchup. That's the pick. If you waited to smoke with me, amen. You've been smoking this whole time, double amen. If you're not a smoker but you enjoy the smoke breaks, that's always been a triple amen. Let's go. Now guys, obviously we've got to give a massive shout out to Dustin the Diamond Poirier. A massive shout out. I didn't expect Dustin to do that good. Guys, I had it 2-2 going into round 5. Can you believe that? 2-2. And some people were saying 3-1, but I disagree. I really disagree. Round 2, round 4. That's Dustin. That fight was 2-2 heading into round 5, in my opinion. And what a fight. What a fight. And also, shout out to the guy in the comment section last week who claims that I'm doing a fake smoke break because I didn't cough, which is kind of funny. I'm not gonna lie. And I said to him in the comments, I was like, bro, the last time I coughed smoking a blunt, Obama was president. I don't want to get into politics too much, but anybody that wants Joe Biden in charge, you're kind of crazy. You're kind of crazy, I'm not gonna lie. Because that guy doesn't even know his name. You know what I'm saying? How can you run a country if you don't even know your name? How'd you do that? And guys, what about the scorecard on Costa and Strickland? Guys, I was ready. I was so ready to drop kick my TV. I was gonna do it. I stood up, bro. Like, 4-1 Costa. 4-1. Stop it. Stop that. Alright guys, let's go. Now moving into a matchup between Punahele Soriano taking on Miguel Baeza. And guys, what a matchup. What a fight. Now the reason as to why I say what a matchup, what a fight. Punahele Soriano, as we know, this guy's got power. You know, we speak about the fighter's strengths, the weaknesses. We know there's no weakness when it comes to power with Punahele Soriano. Now with Miguel Baeza, this guy can crack. You know, the power, the technique, the power calf kick. He's really technical. I'd say more technical than Punahele Soriano. Puna's more of a, you know, he throws the hooks. He doesn't really go A to B. He doesn't really go in a straight line. Everything is wide. Everything is aggressive. Whereas Miguel Baeza's more, you know, we're going to find a target. We're going to go from A to B. We're going to go in a straight line. We're going to use the jab. So I think technically Miguel Baeza's better than Punahele Soriano. But as we've seen with Miguel Baeza, this guy can get chinned. If you find his chin, you can put him down. You can dust this guy up. And we know with Puna, this guy's aggressive. He can set down any opponent. So what you've got here is once again, very, very decent matchmaking by the UFC. Either of these guys can win the matchup. Either of these guys can find a stoppage. Now guys, there's a couple reasons as to why I'm going to pick against Punahele Soriano. The first reason is he lost to Dustin Stoltzfus, which in my opinion, so unforgivable, so unacceptable. And also I picked Roman Kopylov as an underdog against Punahele Soriano. So yeah, the reason why I picked Kopylov against Puna is the same reason. You know, Puna, he's wide. He goes wide with the hooks. And guys, that's fine against some opponents. Against some opponents, that's completely fine, right? The hook is a devastating weapon. But against the opponent that goes from A to B in a straight line, uses the jab, uses the 1-2. And that's what Kopylov does. That's what Miguel does. Against opponents like that, then I'm more likely to pick against Punahele Soriano. So I'm going to do that. Give me Caramel Thunder, Miguel Baeza. Now guys, moving into a matchup between Julian Marquez taking on Zach Reese. And this is a very, very interesting matchup. It's interesting and I'll let you know why. Now with every breakdown, I always try to let you guys know what we need to know with every matchup. I always try to do that. So I'm going to try to do that with this matchup. Now with Zach Reese, you're seeing that he's getting round 1 stoppages, right? Everything is a round 1 stoppage. And recently against Cody Brundage, he got dusted. And that's kind of embarrassing because Cody Brundage, really not that good. Now guys, earlier in my breakdown I mentioned at all times in a fight, you're presented with the question, do you want to be here? And it seems to me that the fighter that's in charge, they want to be there. The fighter that's not in charge, eventually, they kind of look for a way out of the fight. Sometimes, right? Depends who it is. Depends what the circumstances are. Now in Julian Marquez's situation, look at this guy. This guy's built like a tank. You know, the big biceps, the big shoulders, the big chest. This guy's a tank. However, this isn't bodybuilding. This is fighting. And guys, the fighter that's built like an absolute tank, you know, the big shoulders, the big biceps, these guys get tired. They get tired so quickly because all that muscle, it requires oxygen, right? So their body's working harder than the average fighter or the fighter that's not built like a bodybuilder, a weightlifter. So with Julian Marquez, he's going to get tired eventually, right? Before Zach Reese does. He should get tired before Zach Reese. Now, because that's most likely the situation, if you're Julian Marquez, you kind of want a round 1 stoppage. You kind of want to go into this fight like a wrecking ball. And he does love Miley Cyrus. However, guys, looking at Zach Reese, everything's a round 1 stoppage too, right? This guy's getting round 1 stoppages. So you kind of think to yourself, okay, someone's going to get a first round stoppage. But guys, if you're Zach Reese, you have to understand, the opponent's not a dosser. You're in the UFC now. You know, these guys aren't going to fold like the opponents that you folded. You've got to overcome the adversity. And that's something he didn't do against Cody Brundage. So if you're Zach Reese, you've got to understand, okay, early on against Julian Marquez, he's going to do his best work. Then if I get into round 2, he's going to fade. And that's where I can get a round 2 stoppage, something that I've not done yet. But guys, here's the thing. You've got to overcome the adversity in round 1 because Julian Marquez is looking for that stoppage. He's going to be aggressive. He's going to be a wrecking ball. And if you're Zach Reese and you can overcome that adversity, stay in the fight, which is something he couldn't do against Cody Brundage, if he can do that this time round, we know Julian Marquez is going to get tired. So really, this one is so volatile. Someone's getting stopped. Someone's got to get dusted. Someone's got to go see Ben Askren. And guys, by the way, shout out to the homie, Kevin Holland. He sent Oleksiejczuk to Snap City. But yeah, someone's going to visit Ben Askren. Someone's going to Shadow City. Who's it going to be? If Zach Reese can overcome the adversity early, then he's going to stop Marquez because Marquez gets tired. And guys, there's an old saying, fatigue will make cowards out of anyone. Give me Julian Marquez. But the main bet would be fight doesn't go the distance. But the bookies probably go like minus 900. So no bets really on this matchup, but the pick is Julian Marquez. Now moving into a matchup between Bruno Ferreira taking on Dustin Stoltzfus, and as I mentioned earlier with the Punahele Soriano and Miguel Baeza breakdown, I'm not really a fan of Dustin Stoltzfus. I mean, he did beat Punahele Soriano as a big underdog, you know, and Punahele Soriano, as I mentioned, he goes wide with the hooks. And so does Bruno Ferreira. You could say it's like a similar opponent because of that. You know, Bruno's going to walk forward, go wide with the hooks, big punches. And Dustin Stoltzfus done well against that. You know, he stayed in the fight against Puna. He broke him down. He won the fight. So it's kind of fair to give Dustin Stoltzfus credit. You know, he deserves credit. But I'm not completely sold on Dustin Stoltzfus. But in my opinion, if he beats Bruno Ferreira, you probably get him to the mat. Because overall, the big power punches of Bruno Ferreira, they're going to be damaging on the feet. And that's the reason why I'm going to side with the moderate favourite, Bruno Ferreira. Give me the Brazilian. Now guys, moving into a matchup between Raul Rosas Jr., who is Werner Jandiroba's little bro, we know that, versus Ricky Turcios. And guys, in my opinion, this is a very decent matchup for Raul Rosas Jr. because he wants to get you to the mat. He wants to use his grappling. He wants to use his physicality. And in all fairness, he's done that to every opponent other than Christian Rodriguez. And as we know with Christian Rodriguez, this guy's a prospect killer. Like if you're a prospect and you're coming up, if you get the name Christian Rodriguez, say to your manager, listen, tell the UFC I broke my back, spinal. And if the name's not Christian Rodriguez, hey, send the contract. I'll sign that. So guys, what I'm saying is, if you're Raul Rosas Jr., you're going to get Ricky Turcios to the mat. And guys, the thing with Ricky Turcios, his takedown defense is so dusty. It's like a newborn baby giraffe. We know when the newborn baby giraffe's born. And I'm not David Attenborough. I'm not trying to do that. But when the newborn baby giraffe's born, it tries to stand on its feet. It just fails. Every time. Go watch it. Go on YouTube and watch that. So when it comes to the takedown defense of Ricky, it's really non-existent. He doesn't know what a down block is. He doesn't know what balance is. He doesn't know what a sprawl is. And he goes with that opportunistic jiu-jitsu style. You know, if you shoot, I'm going to grab your neck. He thinks he's Dustin Poirier. I'm going for the ghillie. Hey, I'll say this about the ghillie though. When I was in the ghillie suit with the M21 back in my day on COD 4, it was a sight to behold. I was dangerous with the M21. But when it comes to Ricky Turcios, he doesn't know what defensive wrestling is. He doesn't know how to stay on the feet. He's going to try to submit Raul Rosas Jr. as Raul Rosas Jr. shoots. And obviously he's going to fail. And as he fails, Raul Rosas Jr. gets the top control. Then starts to go to work, you know, takes the back of Ricky Turcios. So guys, because of all of that, it should be a pretty mandatory win for Raul Rosas Jr. And guys, don't forget, Ricky Turcios was punching the air like he was Caitlin Chikagian against Zahabi. Now, I did kind of forget that and bet him against Kevin Natividad. But against Natividad, like I said, takedown defense, non-existent. His striking defense, dusty. It should be a pretty mandatory win for Raul Rosas Jr. That's how it seems. Now, moving into a phenomenal co-main event, we've got Dominic Reyes taking on Dustin Jacoby. And guys, this is a phenomenal co-main event. Dominic Reyes, you know, this guy could have been a champion. In some people's opinions, he beat John Jones. And that's the first ever time I picked against John Jones. So in some people's opinion, Dominic Reyes did win that fight. However, since that fight, dusted by Jan Blachowicz, dusted by Jiri Prochazka, he nearly died against Ryan Spann. You know, Dominic Reyes has taken a lot of damage. And the thing about taking all that damage is you don't get better from that. You know, you only get worse. We're seeing that with Tony Ferguson. And Tony Ferguson's a guy that relied on his durability throughout his whole UFC career. And we're starting to see the consequences of that. Now with Dominic Reyes, he's very technical. Right, the left kick, the left straight. He's a phenomenal striker, a great boxer, great kicker. But recently, you know, he's been getting dusted. However, guys, recently with Dustin Jacoby, he's kind of been getting hit a little more than what he's used to. He's a really good calf kicker. You know, a lot of kickboxing experience that Dustin Jacoby has. You see that in his game. You know, he'll find the calf kick, get back on his bike. Guys, I've made a lot of money betting on Dustin Jacoby. Right, but what you're starting to see is his defense is starting to fade. You know, big punches are starting to get through. Mirzakhanov, Menefield, and I bet on Dustin Jacoby against Roundtree. I thought he won the fight, but like I said, some of those big punches landing on the guard, some getting through. More recently against Mirzakhanov and Menefield, like I said, those ones evidently getting through. You know, rocking Jacoby. So you've got a guy like Dustin Jacoby. You know, a technical guy that's gonna find the calf, right? But what you want to do if you're Dominic Reyes is, look, I'm going to find my left body kick. I'm going to find my left straight. And essentially it's a battle of, look, who's going to be more technical? Who's going to implement their game plan? Give me the underdog. Give me Dom the Devastator to devastate Dustin Jacoby. Now, guys, moving into the main event, and it's a very, very difficult prediction to make because Jared Cannonier is, you know, this guy's phenomenal. The power, the big knockout power. Jared Cannonier, the dude's a killer. Then you've got Nasruddin Imavov, who's, you know, not cut from the same cloth as Jared Cannonier. More of a butterfly rather than a stone. And he also fought Roman Dolidze previously in a main event, and you know, Roman Dolidze's a stone. You know, the guy's planted. You know, not doing too much with the footwork. Now, Jared Cannonier is similar to Roman Dolidze in the sense that he can plant his feet. You know, he doesn't have to be moving as much because the power is so significant, so dangerous. And we've seen that so many times with Jared Cannonier. Now, Nasruddin, he's going to play like Cyril Gane. And guys, the style of Cyril Gane is to be agile, is to be quick, is to be light, is to be fast, is to be always on your bike, you know, using agility. And that's what Nasruddin likes to do. So, guys, in my opinion, if every fighter could fight like Cyril Gane, then you would. But it's so difficult. So really, you're looking at Jared Cannonier, who's got big knockout power, big experience, against somebody that is arguably playing the striking game at a much higher level than Jared Cannonier. But that doesn't mean that Jared Cannonier can't cause problems for Nasruddin Imavov. And the power that Jared Cannonier possesses kind of equalizes the playing field between Jared Cannonier and Nasruddin Imavov. You know, Nasruddin wants to be light, wants to be using his skills, wants to be using his agility. And Jared Cannonier is like, well, I can't do that. But what I can do is put these 4-ounce gloves on your chin. And when I do, you're going to fall to the mat. You're going to get dusted. Guys, for me personally, I'm going to side with Nasruddin Imavov. You know, he's 12 years younger than Jared Cannonier. Jared Cannonier is 40 years old. Nasruddin Imavov is 28. And also, the groundwork of Nasruddin Imavov, it does appear to be at a pretty serviceable level. You know, put Edmund Shabazian in the crucifix, dusted him up. 12 years younger than Jared Cannonier. He's already playing the striking game better at a higher level than Jared Cannonier, in my opinion. Now, the only way that Jared Cannonier is going to win the matchup is just to find a big shot. You know, find a big punch, which is possible. It's Jared Cannonier. You know, this guy's a killer. So I'm going to side with Nasruddin Imavov. You know, very light, very tricky, very agile, very fast. He's like the middleweight version of Cyril Gane. That's what I'm seeing with Nasruddin. So I'm going to take that all day over the power of Jared Cannonier. The prediction is Nasruddin Imavov. As always, guys, drop down your main event, your co-main event, your Money City bets, all that good stuff. Drop it in the comment section below. And as always, keep your eyes to the sky and never glued to your shoes. Peace.